Ireland's Vanishing Triangle, a series of mysterious missing women. A whisper in the mist when Ireland starts to lose women. Dublin, 1993. The afternoon passed quietly. Pale rays of sunlight filtered through thick clouds, illuminating a small road leading to the southern edge of the city. Silence. No one could have guessed that this was the beginning of one of the most chilling mysteries in modern Irish history, which was later dubbed by the press with a haunting name, the Vanishing Triangle. If you find this video interesting, don't forget to like to support, share for your friends to explore, and subscribe to 2D Mystery so you don't miss any mysteries that are about to be revealed. Between 1993 and the early 2000s, at least 8 women mysteriously disappeared in the same area. A geographical area that spans from Dublin to counties Meath, Laois, and Wicklow, forming a strange triangle where fear grows with each disappearance. These women, all normal, all unconnected to criminal activity, with no signs of wanting to leave, left their homes, walked, drove, or simply crossed a road, and then vanished completely as if they had never existed. No bodies, no evidence, no witnesses, just silence. A silence so chilling that it sent chills down the entire country. Ireland, land of fairy tales or place hiding dark secrets. Ireland has always been known as a mysterious land, a place where fairy tales and tragedies coexist. Behind the green fields lie centuries of Celtic lore, ghosts, and wandering spirits. But what happens when the mystical moves beyond the myth and into the real world? In the early 1990s, Ireland was changing. The economy was booming, and information technology was beginning to permeate everyday life. But in the suburbs and small towns, narrow forest roads, quiet villages, and isolation were still present. It was against this backdrop that the first disappearances took place, quietly, without fanfare. But the disappearances that followed became increasingly public. The first woman, Annie McCarrick, the beginning of a haunting. Annie McCarrick, a 26-year-old American student with a passion for Irish culture, moved to Dublin in 1993. She loved to hike, explore the Wicklow Mountains, and loved the simple life there. On March 26 that year, she left her home in Sandymount, telling her flatmates that she might be visiting the mountains. She is said to have taken a bus to Enniskerry, and it is believed that she went to the Johnny Fox's pub, a cafe famous for its traditional performances. Then she disappeared completely. There was no trace, no credit card signal, no witnesses. Her family flew in from America, searched everywhere, but in vain. The police suspected foul play, but found nothing concrete. Annie, once full of enthusiasm, became the first missing person in the Vanishing Triangle. The Dark Edge, the next victims. After Annie, other names began to appear. Eva Brennan, 39, disappeared in Dublin in 1993. She left a family meal, went home, and then was never seen again. Her flat was left with the door ajar. Imelda Keenan, 22, disappeared in January 1994 in Waterford. She was last seen crossing the road in light summer clothes, ill-suited to the cold, and was never seen again. Josephine Jojo Dullard, 21, disappeared in 1995 while hitchhiking home. She made a phone call from phone box in Moon, County Kildare, spoke to a friend, stopped suddenly, and disappeared. Sierra Breen, 17, disappeared in 1997 in Dundalk. Her mother said she had just said goodnight and then disappeared from the house through a bedroom window. Fiona Sinnott, 19, disappeared in 1998 in County Wexford after a night out at a bar. Deirdre Jacob, 18, disappeared in 1998 just yard from her aunt's front door. Fiona Pender, 25, disappeared in 1996, 7 months pregnant. She was last seen at her flat in Tullamore. They all had something in common. They were young, they lived simple lives, none had a reason to leave, and they disappeared completely in this strange triangle. The missing triangle, just a coincidence? Investigators initially did not link these disappearances together. They took place between 1993 and 1998, each person in a different area, each in a different situation. But the press and the public began to take notice. Something was very wrong. An imaginary triangle was drawn, from South Dublin, down through the Wicklow Mountains, then up into Laois and Meath. One by one, the women disappeared. The question was this the work of a serial killer? Someone who could operate silently, choose their targets carefully, and leave no trace? If so, why have no arrests been made? Why are the files still frozen? Or is there something deeper? The darkness behind the fog, official failure, or cover-up? Adding to the mystery was the serious lack of investigation. Some cases were not treated as crimes for months. The police were short-staffed, files were scattered, and there was no dedicated missing persons investigation team. Many of the victims' families believed that the authorities failed to protect their daughters, or worse, deliberately failed to investigate thoroughly. Did they underestimate the crime, or was someone powerful covering it up? Some more extreme theories suggest that the Vanishing Triangle was more than just a series of disappearances. It was the work of a secret organization, a group of killers, or a serial killer with protection. Nameless ghosts, when clues begin to speak. Small clues in the big silence. For years after the women disappeared, the public and media were only aware of one side of the story. No trace, no witnesses, no body. But in fact, some strange clues did crop up, only to be dismissed, forgotten, or disappear from the records. At the scene of Jojo Dullard's disappearance, a 21-year-old hitchhiker who made her last call from a payphone in Moon, a witness told police she had seen a black car pull up nearby. The driver was described as a middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap, but when he returned a few days later with more information, police were unable to locate the original record. A ghost of information, like a wisp of smoke, appearing and disappearing. Witnesses saw, but weren't sure. One of the most frightening aspects of the missing triangle is the sense of uncertainty that pervades the accounts. One witness claims to have seen Fiona Sinnott on the night she disappeared, but isn't sure whether it was before or after she left the bar. Another says she saw a girl who looked just like Sierra Breen at a bus stop in Belfast 2 weeks after she disappeared. All of these accounts fall into the same category. They're not solid enough. They're not backed up by evidence. But more worryingly, there are signs that some of the accounts contradict each other or disappear from the investigative file altogether, as if someone didn't want them to be tested. What makes so many witnesses unsure of what they saw? Anonymous letters and midnight phone calls. In late 1996, an anonymous letter arrived at the Irish Independent. In the letter, the writer claimed that a group of influential, well-placed men are preying on young women for an ancient religious rite. It read like fiction, but the writer knew details that had never been made public, such as the name of the bar Fiona Sinnott had visited and the actual location of her missing necklace. The police never verified the letter's origin. They assumed it was a hoax. But 2 weeks later, Deirdre Jacobs' mother received an anonymous call at 3 a.m. It was a man's voice whispering, "You will not find your daughter. Stop looking." The call was unrecorded, untraceable. Once again, it was as if someone was several steps ahead of the investigators, or the investigators themselves had chosen not to pursue it. Unforgivable mistakes. An internal investigation report released in 2018 stated, some of the key evidence in the case of Fiona Pinder's disappearance was stored in the wrong place and could not be retrieved for 9 years. No one was held accountable. In Eva Brennan's case, CCTV footage from a building opposite her home was recorded during the time she was reported missing, but the footage was erased before police could collect it due to automated building procedures. Her family's requests to restore the data were denied. Was it a coincidence or evidence of a kind of deliberate forgetfulness? When a suspect appears and then disappears. Several suspects were detained, but then released for lack of evidence. Among them was a man from the Wicklow Mountains who was described as a recluse who walked alone in the woods and lit fires at night. In his cabin, police found a female necklace and newspaper clippings of missing persons cases. But he was not convicted because no one could prove that the items belonged to any of the victims. Another man, a truck driver who regularly drove through the triangle, was accused of picking up young girls and then disappearing. But all of the cases were dropped after a few weeks of investigation. Are they really innocent? Or is there simply not enough evidence to charge them? Independent investigators' theories. An independent investigative team, led by journalist Gemma O'Doherty once, put forward shocking theory. The missing triangle may be the result of a powerful person or group of people who can manipulate investigations and steer public opinion. They believe the victims were not chosen at random, but belonged to a vulnerable group, often living alone with few social connections, likely to disappear without much notice. The perpetrator may have been watching them for weeks, even months, before striking. What's more frightening is the case didn't stop at 8. There may have been more, but no one discovered it. A fog of memory. Although the disappearances happened decades ago, every time a newspaper article mentions them, Irish people still feel a chill. There are whispered stories of girls seen gliding through Glencree Forest or figures walking the wrong way on the motorway at 2 a.m., always disappearing as cars approach. Are the missing people really just victims of crime? Or are they symbols of a buried reality? A fractured Ireland that no one dares to name? The silence that speaks. Not all ghosts appear in the dark. There are ghosts that are created from human silence, from forgotten records, from ignored clues, from answers that someone knows, but chooses not to tell. In the Lost Triangle, silence is the loudest scream. Between shadow and truth, suspects who appeared and disappeared. Those who were suspected, but never convicted. There is an uncomfortable truth about the Irish Triangle disappearances. Although many suspects were questioned by police and even briefly detained, none were ever criminally prosecuted. The shadowy figures who had taken shape drifted through the investigation like cold winds, coming and going, leaving only nameless suspicion. Larry Murphy, the beast of Baltinglass. It's impossible to talk about the Lost Triangle without mentioning Larry Murphy, the man once called the devil with a human face. In 2000, Murphy was arrested for the abduction, rape, and attempted murder of a woman in the Wicklow Mountains, an area within the Lost Triangle itself. He was caught trying to strangle her to death in the woods late at night and was only stopped by 2 men who happened to be passing by. When police searched his home, they found topographical maps, hunting gear, and a collection of photographs of unidentified women. He made no statements about any other disappearances, although police suspected him of involvement in the deaths of Fiona Sinnott, Jojo Dullard, and Deirdre Jacob, all of whom disappeared while Murphy was living in the area. No physical evidence was found to convict him. After serving his sentence, Murphy left Ireland in secret. Rumors circulated that he had lived in Spain, France, even Canada, but no one knew for sure. A true ghost. The man who walked in the Wicklow Forest. In 2005, another arrest shocked the public. A middle-aged man living in an isolated cabin near Glenmalure Valley, also part of the Lost Triangle, was arrested after a group of hikers reported strange signs, animal traps, restraints, and women's items left near the edge of the woods. When police searched the cabin, they found some jewelry, old hair, and blood on the blanket, maps marked with red excess, a handwritten notebook with haunting notes. They're not hard to find, just be quiet and patient. Don't let their eyes get on you. However, no direct evidence linking the items to the victims was found in the file. After several weeks of investigation, the man was released. His identity has never been made public. The mysterious men in the car and the disappearance. A common thread in many of the disappearances is that the victims were said to have gotten into a car with a stranger. In Jojo Dullard's case, a witness said she got into a black car. In Deirdre Jacobs' case, neighbors reported seeing an unfamiliar car parked outside her house before she disappeared. Police rounded up more than 50 local drivers, questioning dozens, including 2 men with previous convictions for sexual assault. But strangely, records of the interviews disappeared, and no one ever heard from them again. One of them, according to an independent investigation by a freelance journalist, disappeared from town just a week after the case was brought to the attention of the press. He had been suspected in a 1994 assault on a woman, but was never charged. Was someone covering for them? Former cops and a cover-up? A theory that has rocked Irish society. Were police involved in a cover-up? In 2011, a leaked internal Garda document revealed that at least 3 officers have been transferred from the Kildare Wicklow area for moral reasons. One of them had personal contact with 2 of the victims, had been seen at their workplace, but had never been formally investigated. Independent investigators suspect that some of the evidence had been doctored or misrepresented to avoid damaging the Garda's image. If someone in the law enforcement sector was involved, the case is much more complicated. Forgotten suspects. Most worrying is the number of people who were once named as suspects, but then quietly removed from the list without any explanation. The press has mentioned a former nun lives in a disused convent near the last known location of Fiona Pender. An elderly bachelor farmer who lit fires at night and was accused by neighbors of stalking young women who passed by his farm. A long-haul lorry driver was accused of picking up women and driving them off to an unknown destination. But none of the victims came forward because they all disappeared. These people were mentioned briefly in newspapers, but their records no longer exist in official archives. Who were they, and why were they forgotten? They knew but couldn't talk? In a rare interview in 2022, a former investigator who asked not to be named said, "I can't give names, but I believe there are at least 2 people living in Ireland today who know what happened to those girls. They won't talk, either out of fear or out of complicity." The words echoed like a curse. In a land shrouded in mist, where identity blends with the terrain, the guilty can still walk free, hidden among the innocent. 8. Between the shadows and the truth. Perhaps the scariest thing is not that no one has been convicted, but that many have been suspected, but have been cleared in silence. Those who have been exposed, who were considered very likely, have been forgotten as if they never existed. Is it possible that the truth is still there, but no one has dared to face it long enough to see it? Forgotten pieces. The missing cases that no one can connect. When no one can connect the coincidences. When the public talks about the missing triangle, names like Annie McCarrick, Jojo Dullard, or Deirdre Jacob are often mentioned first. But hidden behind that picture are a series of disappearances that have never been officially connected, even though they happened in the same place at the same time, and even have many creepy coincidences. These are the forgotten cases, not labeled missing triangle. Not because they don't fit, but perhaps because they fit too well to be scary. Mary Phelan disappearing on a daily routine. On an autumn day in 1993, Mary Phelan, a 32-year-old woman living in Carlow, left her home for the Central bus station to go to her parents' house. She never arrived. Mary was an introvert, had no enemies, and lived a simple life. She left no letters, and she didn't bring much luggage. It was just a short weekend trip. The small rucksack she was carrying was found on a park bench in Newbridge, a town close to the area of famous disappearances. However, Mary's case was never officially registered. The reason? There was insufficient evidence to suggest a criminal element. Imelda Keenan, the woman who walked away and never returned. On January 3rd, 1994, Imelda Keenan, 22, from Waterford, left her flat saying she was going to the doctor. She was last seen crossing the road near the town hall. She has not been seen since. No phone signal, no bank card, no trace. Although Waterford lies slightly outside the boundaries of the Lost Triangle, many of the elements of her case are identical to those of the other victims. Young, disappeared in broad daylight. No signs of struggle, no motive to flee. A retired detective once said, if her case had happened in Wicklow instead of Waterford, it would have been part of a series of disappearances. Sandra Collins, Sea and Darkness. On Christmas Eve 2000, Sandra Collins, 28, left her home in Killala, Mayo, a coastal town in the west of Ireland, to go to the shops. She never returned. Her handbag was found near the wharf, her phone still inside. It was initially thought she had jumped into the river, but the tides were wrong, and no body was ever found. Sandra had a boyfriend who had been abused, but he had an alibi. The family believed she was lured or coerced, and most likely taken elsewhere before being murdered. The big question, why did she disappear in a similar fashion to the triangle, but was left out? Priscilla Clark and Bernadette Connolly, 2 people, 1 ghost. Priscilla Clark disappeared in 1988 while horse riding with the wife of a diplomat. She fell into the river Rye near her home in Leixlip, and although the horse was found, Priscilla's body was never recovered. Bernadette Connolly, 45, disappeared in 2022 while walking along the beach in Swords. The last CCTV footage shows her standing alone, looking out to sea, then turning away and disappearing. Bernadette's body was found in the UK, drifting from Ireland. But how did she get into the dangerous waters that day? Why no witnesses? Despite the different circumstances, both cases leave a familiar chill, swept away by water or by something invisible. The clues no one connects. In the old, forgotten files, the account of a white car that often appeared near the disappearances. A gray-haired man in a woolly cap was seen standing in front of a bus stop on 4 separate occasions. Anonymous phone calls reporting that the victim is no longer in the country. Each clue was filed separately, and so never became part of the bigger picture. Why were they not recognized as part of chain? The Irish authorities have always been cautious about linking disappearances together. They fear causing panic or getting into legal trouble. But there's also a rumor that because the cases are so similar, someone wanted to separate them so that no one could see the obvious connection. The fragmentation of information not only delays justice, but also obscures it. 8. Calls from the dark. Families of the little-known victims have petitioned to have their loved ones added to the official Missing Triangle list, but have been denied. They say they were someone's daughters too. They were Irish, and they didn't come back either. What if these disappearances were part of a larger nightmare? What if the killer knew that splitting the cases was the easiest way to avoid being pursued? Shadows in the mist. The hidden predator hypothesis. Predators that leave no footprints. In the world of criminology, there are killers who terrify us with their cold-blooded actions, but there are also those who instill fear with their utter invisibility. Ireland's Missing Triangle does not seem to be dominated by a conventional string of insane murders. Here, all traces lead to a cold void, where there is no DNA, no bodies, no witnesses. And that very absence is the most powerful testimony. Something is hunting, but it doesn't want to be seen. A recurring motif: no clues, no violence, no reason. Analyzing the 8 core disappearances in the Triangle from 1993 to 1998 and expanding to the peripheral cases, we see a recurring motif. Victim is female, aged 18 to 39. Disappears in broad daylight in a public space. No screams for help, no struggle, no blood. Often disappears just before or after leaving a public transportation point. No one saw the event happen. This does not seem like the behavior of a random person. This is someone who has followed, planned, and knows how to erase traces absolutely. Hypothesis number 1. A lone killer. The shapeshifter. Many researchers believe that there is only one person responsible for all the disappearances in the Triangle. Temporary nickname: the shapeshifter. He is described in the hypothetical profile as follows. Male, aged 35 to 50 at the time of the crime. Resident near Wicklow or Kildare, familiar with the forest terrain. Ability to travel discreetly, using a car. Not picking victims at random, but following them for at least a few days. A chilling detail: police once found a notebook with a map of Wicklow Forest, including symbols in remote areas. But it was deemed irrelevant. If he was the real one, he may never have been caught. Not because he was good, but because he never revealed his existence. Theory number 2. A group? A network of hunters? Another shocking theory. Not just one person, but many working together. Many of the disappearances coincide with sightings of a white van without a license plate, or 2 men standing near a bus stop. It has been reported that a man was arrested in 1999 for kidnapping a woman, later released for lack of evidence. A former inmate at Mountjoy prison said he had heard of a gang transporting women across the Irish border to be sold or killed. On the outskirts of Dublin, there were reports of an abandoned house with a locked room and signs of bondage. This leads to the most chilling theory. The victims may not have died immediately, but were held captive, taken away, or used for some other dark purpose. Theory 3. An influential figure, the one who wouldn't be named. Some former investigative journalists have suggested that the perpetrator may have been a trusted figure in the community, perhaps even someone in uniform. Rumors. A man who worked in the railway and public transport sector regularly in the area of disappearance. A man who was a reserve officer, but was taken out of service early for no apparent reason. A security guard at the university, where the two victims had studied, was urgently transferred after an unpublicized incident. If true, this is not just a series of murders, but a cover-up, a systematic veil of silence. 6. The timeline and the lingering silence. One strange thing, after 1998, the series of disappearances suddenly stopped, or at least was no longer recorded with the same motif. Why? Did the killer die? Did he leave Ireland? Or did the hunting methods simply change? More sophisticated, more invisible? Some believe it never ended. We just don't recognize the motif anymore. The truth will not emerge on its own. For 30 years, the truth has remained hidden in the fog that has shrouded Ireland. And if there is one thing that is certain, it is this. No disappearance happens in a vacuum. Someone knows. Someone has seen. But they remain silent. We need more than just testimony. We need the courage to look into the darkness, where the shadow still waits. Pushpin's series conclusion, Ireland's Vanishing Triangle, is more than a series of disappearances. It is a harrowing testament to how justice can fail when the truth is hidden by fear and oblivion. They, the women who disappeared, deserve to be known, connected, and found. From the dead, or from the darkest corners of society.